All right, so I'm gonna just do maybe a series of walk and talks here. I walk to work, and obviously I play a lot of video games on this channel, but video games are just one little tiny part of a person's identity, I'm sure to many people's surprise. Something I've been thinking about lately is sort of the 10,000 year history of humanity, just kind of thinking about it from an anthropological perspective. And why are things so weird and difficult right now, especially in the United States of America. It seems like we're struggling with some civil, society issues. Just the idea of how to run a country. How do you run a country? I mean, running a country is hard. It is hard to run a country. Our country, I'm American. I'm basically, I really am like as American as it gets. I'm a stereotypical American. I'm a very liberal Democrat, so I believe that everyone should own a gun, I believe that everyone should vote. Just kind of a big constitutional guy here, and I'm sure there's some stuff we could add, and maybe, when we start colonizing the moon, colonizing Mars, we're going to find out some new things. We're going to be like, maybe we should have had this in the Constitution the whole time, and we just didn't really, we didn't really think about it. And honestly, that's not really for my generation. I am a millennial, so a millennial, I think it's 1984 to 1997 or so, kind of a little, maybe a few years on either edge of that, but kind of between those times. I am 1989, so I was 12 years old when the Twin Towers were blown up, by a religious militant zealot. But it was it was like in response to other religious militant zealots. And you're going to hear me talk a lot of shit about religious teachings. I do hesitate to say talk shit about religious people, because people, I mean, we're just kind of, we're just evolved apes. It's not like we're really, I don't think people are inherently bad. I don't think people are born with some kind of evil inside of them outside of just kind of a genetic mutation, right, that makes a certain part of your brain underdevelop, like empathy or something. So you become naturally, without any really environmental or social input, you just naturally become a sociopath or a psychopath. But that's just because it's a genetic mutation, with your brain. There's a lot of neuroscience, behind this stuff. That's sort of a new cutting edge science that, millennials were pretty into that. But I think, honestly, Zoomers, alpha, like y'all are going to have to, y'all are going to have to figure out more of the neuroscience stuff, because we're only just starting to get there. Millennials, though. So as a millennial, the thing that I take pride in is media literacy. I'm an English major. I read a lot. I write a lot. I read other people's opinions. I read stupid opinions. I read inflammatory opinions. I read stuff that is designed. It is actually just born from a want to confuse and distract and anger. That's a lot of stuff posted on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, on Reddit, on YouTube, on every fucking social media that you can think of. You know, they all function on the idea that, like, as long as there's people online here and they're yelling at each other, then we can sell advertising. So obviously when it comes to, like, you know, how to run a country, again, the whole point here being how to run a country, you don't learn how to do that on social media. You don't learn how to become a good voter, you know, on social media. You don't learn how to become a leader or a follower, you know, I mean, kind of being able to peer through the veil of false leadership or a false prophet. You don't really learn any of that on social media. And as a millennial, you know, I kind of grew up on social media to a certain degree, but it was alongside, you know, a traditional, like, scientific, organized education. And social media was just kind of like it was like a toy, right? It was sort of like a fun little extra thing. And so the problem now, of course, with kind of the generations following millennials is that media literacy in general is starting, it's declining. And it's really just because the raw amount of energy that younger people are investing in, you know, these fucking weird, you know, just the weird social media spaces and kind of yelling at each other and then validating each other about the yelling. It's weird, right? It kind of it sort of fries your emotional response. You know, again, a lot of this is neuroscience, but it's the idea that, like, certain receptors in your brain are getting overloaded all the time, and then you need kind of more what's the word, kind of just very literal, like, validation. Like, you need more kind of therapeutic input, more coping, you know, mechanisms, especially physical coping mechanisms, which can come in the form of alcoholism, you know, vaping tobacco or vaping marijuana, other just kind of controlled substances, you know, these things that kind of can physically help you maintain a slightly more normalized physical being, because it's weird, you know, how your brain just starts getting wired to, you know, to see threats in many places where there is no threat. It's, you know, it's online. Like, have you ever thought about just, you know, put your phone down and walk outside, right? And we you know, we make fun of that. We talk about, like, go outside and touch some grass. It's not all bad. You know, there's plenty of examples of really great, you know, content creators, influencers, you know, people who are doing it the right way. You know, strangely, a lot of them are millennials. You know, a lot of them are a little bit older. You know, but there's definitely some Zoomers who are starting to enter into that space too. You know, seeing the value in providing, like, purely enriching, uplifting, original, you know, opinionated content. That's really the saving grace of social media. It's the only reason that social media even exists anymore. Even though, I mean, it is being replaced slowly by the content slop. I'm sure you've heard of content slop, right? Which, you know, it could be AI generated. I mean, you don't even know if these are people. I mean, that's the whole point. You don't even know, like, is this person real? If they're real, did they make all of this up? You know, it's like you start asking these questions like, where am I right now? Like, and again, then you need to maybe have a drink, maybe smoke a little bit, you know. But those things, it's not healthy. It's not a healthy thing to do just compulsively, right? It should be something for fun, you know, something celebratory, something experimental, something where it's a purposeful purposefully exciting behavior. Anyway, so when it comes to running a country, there are some basic things. So, obviously, one of the first things about running a country, weirdly, traditionally, again, I hope we are going to get away from this, but you do have to organize a defense. Having a standing army means that you are going to be safe from other countries who realize that having a standing army is also basically the first most important thing of any, organized civilization. We say country, you can just think of it as like a village. If your village really wants to just settle down and start farming, or, just having sort of a slightly more permanent presence in an area, even in a nomadic sense, just the idea of having a single sort of organized community structure, a society that is at least, wanting to maintain itself, or, the more obvious sort of biological imperative of growing, having more children than the previous generation, even if it's just by one, but a very slight growth pattern. Having a organized defense is it's just proven time and time again. Even AI simulations in modern day are proving that organized defense is always the first thing. But, there's some considerations with that. Two main things is, like, you need food. People need food. You have to fuel all this stuff. You have to build houses. People need to be able to, like, kind of live at least in a certain comfort level, to not just be sick and injured and dying all the time, and have a good, because that's where society just kind of breaks down. There's no reason to do anything if you're literally not even surviving for a week, right? So food and housing kind of go hand in hand with the organized defense. Those are the three things. Things like healthcare. Healthcare enters into the food and housing thing. The idea of, weirdly, like, withholding healthcare or having healthcare be some sort of transaction, of course, is completely alien concept, and it's a really fucked up part of the U.S. The USA right now, the way that we treat illness and health issues as sort of a transaction, kind of what, certain people are worth more than other people, really based on nothing, based on random chance. It's not really based on anything. It's based on how rich your parents are, or, what the color of your skin, whatever. And that's that is actually a weakness in our defense, so when it comes to the idea of having that organized defense that is well fed and is housed, and is kind of satisfied, fulfilled, they're able to defend themselves. When you have a lot of them who are just sick and they're being left behind, it really does cause strategic issues if we are ever involved in some kind of war. Now, in modern times, we have, fucking nuclear weapons. Nobody really wants to go to war. It's all kind of a posturing thing. It's all about trying to score little tiny points here and there. It's a big game, because, again, we are still just apes who have evolved to have nuclear weapons. It's not like we're not like highly evolved life forms. We're kind of pretty basic. We would lose all of our knowledge within one generation if there was zero education, right? It's not like we would just be born being able to speak English and knowing how to add, math. You're not born knowing the quadratic equation. It's all taught. It's all taught through society, through a organized, social structure. Anyway, so running a country really is all about those three tenets of an organized defense, and then just having food and housing. I mean, housing is an interesting point. I don't know, there's probably a lot more we could talk about, but that's sort of the 10,000 year idea for how countries form and how they last. And this is a conversation that we're going to keep having. And yeah, this is like part 1 of a billion probably. So whatever. Yeah, fuck it. Whatever.